Ask the Dean, episode 72. I'm glad you guys didn't get to hear everyone making fun of me before we went live.
Oh no, we
All
were
love.
openly adoring you.
Yes, it's all love.
We are having fun here. Team Mapped, excited to be back for another Ask the Dean here Wednesdays live out to the world at 1 p.m. Eastern. For those of you watching on replay, we are giving away every week a 1-year subscription with Mapped Advising through Map Chat to our commenters who leave an amazing comment on our Ask the Dean videos, or this specific video after we go live. So if you're watching a replay, go leave a great comment and we'll maybe pick you to win. We may also be giving one away live here as well. No guarantees, but maybe we'll see. I am joined by the de facto dean himself, Dr. Scott Wright. How are you doing, my friend?
Oh, I'm doing fantabulous.
Fantabulous.
Yes,
That's
everything
wonderful.
here in Austin, Texas is rocking and rolling.
Yes, everything is bigger and better in Texas, apparently.
Yeah, that's what they say.
That's what they say, except the power grid. We won't go there.
Yeah, well, yeah. Let's not
and
go there,
maybe
yeah.
some laws around some specific things, but we'll
Yeah,
stay away from
right.
that too. Anyway,
we won't go there.
we won't go there. Verinia Granum,
Yes.
how are you doing,
I'm
my
doing-
friend?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much. How's everyone else doing?
We're doing wonderful. Former assistant dean in the Prehealth and STEM advising office at Hofstra. Before we stole you to come be an amazing advisor here on the Mapped team. So
You guys are awesome.
you get to spread your knowledge, your amazing, beautiful knowledge to the world through Ask the Dean, through your one-on-one advising sessions, and some more fun stuff we have planned in the future. So I'm excited for that.
Yes. Thank you.
And as always, joined by Mapped co-founder Rachel Grubbs. How are you doing?
Hello. I'm great. It was nice to laugh with all of you guys just before the session started.
Yes, and even while it was starting, it's good to
That's
laugh.
true. My laughs tend to go long.
It's good to laugh. That is that is Newton's second law? An object in motion will stay in motion.
Yeah.
That laugh will keep going unless acted upon by an outside force. So bring in some nerdy physics here as we go. Ask the Dean, we are here to answer your questions. So in the YouTube comments, go ask questions. That's where we pull them from to answer here on this session, this live video session. So let's rock and roll. Our first question here is it better to do a 5th year or a post-bacc? Interesting question, right? 5th year or post-bacc? What do you think, Dr. Scott Wright?
That's a good question. I think it depends a little bit on the circumstances of what I guess what is leading EMEA. I guess it's EMEA. What's leading you to want to to feel like you need to do a 5th year or a post-bacc? Is it GPA? Clearly, I'm guessing it's a GPA issue, or maybe you're just beginning the process. You've just become a pre-med, and you're wondering, should I go do a second, a post-bacc that's geared for people like that, or if you want to do a 5th year. So I think the circumstances. We need to know more information about this to really make a good judgment on that.
Yeah.
So it's hard to know.
Is there anything technically different? At the end of the day, it's more credits and more classes. From an admissions side of things, do you look at it differently and say, well, this post-bacc is different, it's harder, versus a student who I've seen oftentimes where they have like 70 credits listed as their senior year because they either stayed longer and just didn't graduate or for whatever purposes? Is there a technical difference that would you would evaluate that application differently?
Not necessarily. No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think it depends a little bit. A good question that I would have is, what's the academic background look like in the college program? What's that GPA trend look like for the students, and what are the reasons why a 5th year is necessary? It could be if the student wasn't doing well at their home institution, it might be beneficial to go to a different school and do a post-bacc program at a different school to sort of start over and get a fresh start. And, not that that's going to affect the calculation of the GPA, but I mean, internally for the student to feel like they're getting a fresh start and it can kind of start over with faculty and stuff like that. So, I think it depends a little bit.
Yeah. Awesome. Good question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
All right. Coming live here on Instagram as well. So we'll get that going. Sean asks, I brought up my science GPA from a 2.8 to a 3.1 during a full year of post-bacc, about 24 semester credits, 4.0 post-bacc. Do I need to take more classes? The wonderful when is enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's always the challenge. Dr. Wright, you have historically said for post-bacc classes, if you're needing to prove academic capability, about 45 credits is kind of a good number to shoot for. And so the students only at 24 at this point.
Yeah, I think that obviously it's great that in 24 credit hours the student has done a 4.0. That's fantastic. Let's concentrate on that as opposed to raising the science GPA incrementally. That's going to change very slowly. It's never going to go up, as high as you really want it to. So we're going to concentrate on that 4.0 post-bacc GPA. I guess the question in my mind is, was it a formalized, structured post-bacc program, or was this a do-it-yourself, thing that where the student could do more classes if they just, enrolled in them, or if it was a program that he completed and did well in the program that's going to give him, for example, letters of recommendation, that it's a noteworthy program in terms of it being structured and all that. So again, it depends a little bit, but I would say if it's a do-it-yourself thing, I would say, yeah, get some more hours. I would say, at least get into the 30s, maybe take another 2 or 3 classes to that are upper level. I don't know what you've taken in terms of those 24 credit hours, but if it's a formalized program, then I'd say that's a little bit different, and that I'd say go for it.
Yeah, Sean added it's a do-it-yourself at UCSD extension.
Okay. Well, my suggestion would be to maybe pick up some more hours. I would say, upper level hours, biological sciences of some sort, maybe another 3 or 4 or whatever classes.
Yeah. And Verinia, the situation that always comes from these students will say, well, I only went up to a 3.1, right? Am I shooting to get to a 3.5? Am I shooting to get to a 3.6? Or is it just having a bulk of credits at as close to a 4.0 as possible? And for students in this situation, you just kind of ignore that cumulative number at the end of the day.
Yeah. You want to see that, okay, you've sort of gotten to a point now where you are able to handle this work and you're taking on these upper level sciences and you're showing that you're doing well in them and that you're able to do that work. It definitely shows, the improvement, and it's going to benefit your GPA. And during that time too, I would definitely take advantage of, as much, study time and tutoring and preparing for the MCAT, right? Because that's also going to impact your application.
Yeah. It all is important.
Mm-hmm.
The pre-mid years episode going out today is a little bit of a rant after I saw a Reddit thread, a pre-med subreddit thread that was just like, let's commiserate if you applied this year and you're not getting any traction interview wise, acceptance wise, and it's basically just a list of people going, well, I have a 520 and a 3.8 and I don't see anything, and I have a 517 and a 3.6 and I haven't seen anything, and I have a 522 and a 3.9 and I haven't seen anything. It's like, guys, gals, everyone, you are more than your stats. Stop just throwing your stats out there and saying, oh, I'm never going to get in because whatever. It's just so frustrating. So that's the pre-med years today, if you want to go listen to that rant.
Yeah. One of my favorite activities, listening to Ryan rant. All right.
Mohammed asks, can more and different shadowing experiences and volunteering compensate for less clinical experiences, direct patient contact? Brittany, what do you think? You're over there mouthing.
No. Sadly, unfortunately. And really, you should be looking at this as an opportunity for you to really experience being up close and personal with patients, because this is what you're planning to go into for the rest of your life, hopefully. So no amount of shadowing or volunteering will ever replace clinical exposure.
It's a very often
Or compensate.
kind of thought that I can compensate for a lower GPA. I can compensate for a lower MCAT score. I can compensate for not a lot of clinical or not a lot of shadowing with this other phenomenal experience. And a lot of times it's just like some of those pieces are there for very specific reasons. And if you're completely missing something, that may be an issue.
Yep. Get your clinical, kids.
Yep.
Yes, get your clinical. We need a nice little like theme song for that.
I want it. Yeah, never mind. My brain went immediately to like, let's make some songs. We'll do that later.
Sorry, neurodivergent crowd. We need to stay on task here. Charlotte asks, how do you improve upon test taking skills in regards to the MCAT, not necessarily improving on the actual knowledge of the content? Rachel Grubbs.
Yeah, I will fill this one. So, Charlotte, I want to start respectfully by saying you probably do need to improve on the knowledge of the content, because a lot of times what's going on with the MCAT is people who think they have the content down have it mastered the way you would master it for a college midterm or final. And that is not the same way you need to study for the actual MCAT. So we can talk about strategy here in a minute, but I just want to kind of put out there, if you are doing all of your content kind of in chunks by topic, right? If you're doing, well, I did 3 weeks of chem chapters, and then I moved on and did 3 weeks of physics, and then I moved on and did 3 weeks of bio, and didn't go back to the chem or phys at all during that time, you probably didn't actually cover the content the way you should. Pre-meds tend to be extremely gifted at reading books, memorizing information, and then applying it on an exam within the next few days. And that is a gift. But the MCAT is so different, right? It integrates lots of topics. When you get questions, they're not saying this is specifically a Gen Chem question. I mean, it's even baked into the subjects, right? Chemical and physical foundations of biological systems. You're going to get biochem in the chem phys section. So you have to be sort of nimble and jumping around from content to content. And then you also want to think a lot about active learning. So a lot of people use flashcards. That's great. I also think doing any kind of drawing, right? So tables, charts, mind maps, diagrams, anything you can do to help you kind of reorganize the information so that you're not just repeating what you learned, but actually sort of synthesizing it and showing how connections are made. And you can do that alone in your room with a whiteboard or a piece of paper, or you can find a study buddy and close the book and teach a concept to them. I recently did a presentation with Joya over at Blueprint MCAT, and she and I were joking about how if you don't have people to teach to, just teach to your stuffed animals. If you don't have stuffed animals, my question is why? I mean, everyone should, right? But yeah, teach to your blanket, teach to your pet, teach to the wall, teach to yourself on Zoom, record it and watch it back later and see where you stumble. That's something maybe you need to go review. And all of that is content, right? And then in terms of strategy, it's practice, 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 right? So if you want to improve on test-taking skills, as you said, which I know was the heart of your question, you need to be working on going through passages and sections first untimed and then timed and then graduating to full-length timed exams, doing them under time-pressured conditions as much like the real exam as possible. So don't wear PJs when you're testing unless you're going to actually wear PJs to the test center. Wear shoes and wear a mask because those things make you less comfortable, and that's going to happen on test day. Replicate those conditions as much as you can, and then spend 1 to 2 times as long reviewing the practice exam as you spent taking it. So this could be a whole course. It is. That's why Blueprint has a whole course on it, as well as other companies, right? But
Right.
that's kind of my big picture concept to you, right? Is be active in your learning of your knowledge and be exacting to yourself in your time pressured testing. And good luck, because it is absolutely possible to do it. You can do it.
Great. Ryan asks, is it fine if I ask my lab TA for a recommendation letter? He's a grad student. I was thinking of maybe asking the professor to co-sign it. I'm asking the TA since he was the main point of contact. Dr. Wright, what do you think there?
I think asking the professor to co-sign it would be great. I think basically what you're asking is for the two of them together to write a letter, and that both of them sign the letter. And I think that's a wonderful way to do it. I would encourage that, particularly if the TA is the one that you've had the most contact with, and it just depends a little bit on the professor and kind of what they're willing to do or whatever. But I'd go that direction first. Absolutely.
Yeah. Very often with TAs and then with residents too. So if you're shadowing in a hospital and your point of contact is a resident, typically we say you want the letter to come from an attending, but this whole cosign option is a potential option there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Awesome. Vanessa asks, post-bacc student, I have a 3.93 science GPA and I'm struggling in OChem. Do I risk taking OChem 2 next semester? Brittany, what do you think?
I guess it would depend on the ultimate grade that they end up with, that Vanessa ends up with. It's good that you're recognizing that you are struggling. Definitely talk to your professor, see if there's anything you can do right now to sort of start strengthening those skills, and ask them if they think that you could handle the work in OChem too. They would probably be the professor would probably be the best person to tell you, where do you think I stand right now? Do you think I'm getting this? Is it completely far off? I would, if you're hitting sort of in the C range, I wouldn't recommend it, because clearly you're not getting that, you're not understanding the material enough to move on with more advanced work. But I would check in with your professor, see what they recommend as well.
Yeah,
definitely.
For most people, you're gonna have to take OChem too. So
right,
that's the issue.
That's what I was confused by. Was she saying, should I take it, or was she specifically saying next semester? Like she's making her schedule now and wondering if she should allow a space.
Yeah,
that's kind of how I took it. Yeah.
Okay.
Me too.
Yeah, I mean, one way or another, it's in your future, Vanessa.
Yeah, and it's like Verenia said. I think I want to know what struggling in means. Is that mean a B? If that means a B, then I wouldn't categorize that as struggling. But anything C or less, absolutely, I think you need to back up, reflect, see what try to figure out what's going on. If you're not already tutoring, get in some study groups. Get all the tools that you can to understand first and foremost why you're struggling in OChem 1. But I think in terms of OChem 2, I agree with Verenia now. I would back off of that until you can better understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Sam asks, my school does not guarantee a committee letter until late August. I've already gotten most of my individual letters. What should I do? So my guess is that Sam is saying that he's applying next cycle.
And so I read that.
Yeah. And the fact that you already have your individual letters, I would say you probably are a little early there. You want your letters typically dated the year of your application year. August is very typical for committees, right, Scott? It's very typical for committee letters to come out mid to late August, and it's not an issue.
No.
So I wouldn't be worried about it. If you want your committee letter, if you think they know you well enough, if they have a good track record, then late August is fine for that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, way to plan ahead. I agree with Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ask those letter writers to redate in 2022, but way to be thinking about letters of rec.
Yep.
I submitted this cycle, then got back my second MCAT, a 509 with a 123 in Chem Phys. Will I be screened out for a subsection score less than 125? Oh, the great pre-med myth. I had an overall score increase and all sections were less than 125 on first attempt. Awesome.
Yeah.
Great improvement.
Kudos to you, Rachel.
Yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't worry about that score.
No, me either.
Yeah, it's a great improvement.
Yeah.
Oh, look, we have a famous dead movie star.
Wow.
Thank you for coming back to ask a question. I volunteered as an EMT. I'm glad they got good Wi-Fi and wherever you are. I volunteered as an EMT for 6 months and have 250 hours. I quit so that I can focus on my MCAT. Very, very common scenario, right? Of someone quitting a job to go focus on the MCAT. Does this look like checking off boxes? I have 60 hours of shadowing, 600 hours of scribing so far. So, became an EMT, did it for 6 months, done. I'm done. All right, that's what it looks like on the application. Scott, what are your concerns when you look at an application like that?
Well, I think that I would not fear that it was going to take, that was going to look like checking off boxes. My question, I guess, Carrie, is, would it be possible for you not to pick up maybe one shift a week or something?
Yeah.
If you're volunteering as an EMT, could you pick up one shift a week, and continue doing it while you're doing the MCAT stuff?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be much, but even a little bit can keep you sort of in the mix and make it seem like that you are doing it for reasons other than just checking off a box.
Yeah. Good thought there.
I agree. I mean, I also wonder, right? The MCAT is 3 to 4 months of your life. I mean, Carrie, we don't know about the rest of your life. Maybe you have kids and a full-time job, and the MCAT's going to be a 9 or 10 month endeavor. But you could also do more clinical after the MCAT. So even if you can't find a 5-hour a week commitment,
Right.
Scott, what are your thoughts on a student like this potentially putting as the last sentence or second to last sentence in their activity if they don't go back to being an EMT to say, I left my EMT job to focus on the MCAT?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I think that's appropriate. It at least gives the reader or the admissions committee an understanding of why that dropped off of your activity. So yeah, I think that's appropriate.
It's potential there. Context. So I like to say all the time, there are no rules when it comes to those activity descriptions. And so if it's something that is keeping you up at night, then throw a sentence in there and give context to it.
Yep. Absolutely.
How is volunteering online as a teacher tutor seen in comparison to in person? Well, good thing we've gone through a pandemic and shown the world that we keep going online in a virtual environment. So I don't think you're going to have any problem.
Nope.
Yeah.
It's way more challenging, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To do it online.
I agree with that.
So, yeah.
Lena asks, may I take a gap year to get extra clinical? You may.
Yeah.
I'm worried that med schools will wish I would have gotten more clinical during my undergrad experience rather than after. Just get it.
Just get it.
Yeah. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. This is a good example, and Lena, I don't say this to be to be rude or anything to you, but this is a good example of overthinking a process.
Yeah.
Good clinical experience is good regardless of when or where you get it. So just do it and don't overthink it that it's going to look this way or that way or whatever.
Yeah. A good question, or just kind of a rhetorical question that we often ask is, what's the alternative?
Yeah.
Right? It's like, you've already gone through your undergrad, I'm assuming, and you don't have as much clinical experience as you want. Therefore, you're going to need to get some clinical experience in a gap year. What's the alternative? We don't have time machines yet. Yet.
As far as you know.
Yeah.
Abraham asks, what are your thoughts on January retake? I have a 496 and I'm afraid of not having enough time to significantly increase my score. You answered your own question there. Rachel, what do you think?
Yeah, I was just doing months. I was like November, December, January. It's 3 months.
Yeah.
First of all, Abraham, I hope that while you're watching this, you're also on the AAMC website trying to lock in that January test date, because they go fast.
Depending on where you live.
Yeah, if you're in the western half of the country, tomorrow. But if you're in the Eastern time zone, except for some reason they ignore a couple states that are in this Eastern time zone, you should be signing up for the MCAT right now. But 3 months is plenty of time to do it right. You just have to really look at your schedule and be really honest with yourself about what you can do. Don't schedule yourself a 12-hour shift in the ER and then a 5-hour study session after. Right? That's not going to happen. So figure out where your energy can go, and figure out what you can put away for a little while. Right? Like you can't give up school. You can't give up clinical, or you can give up clinical, but only for a little. But, are there clubs you're doing that don't matter for a few months? Or, you have to think about where you're going to make space in your life to make MCAT a job, and you schedule yourself for study shifts. And then, like any job, maybe you're sick one day, maybe 2 days, but mostly you just show up and do the work.
Yeah. How much does being in the honors program matter to get into top medical schools like UT Southwestern, Baylor, Ivies, etc.?
Not more than clinical.
Oh, we're not making it a heart? Oh,
I was
zero.
making a 0.
Yeah, I know.
That didn't work out very well.
Yeah.
So, Scott, as the former director of admissions at UT Southwestern, how much did you go, okay, this student has a 3.6. Oh, but they were in the honors program. Therefore, we like them more.
I don't think it matters that much. I think it does depend a little bit on where you went to school and how familiar the medical school is with your program and the honors program that you were enrolled in. But at the end of the day, I don't think it really is going to make that big of a difference.
Yeah.
And I used to get this question all the time, from high school seniors and freshmen. Should I should I go into the honors program at my institution? Would that look, good on my application? And my statement to that is always, do not do it to look good on your application. Do it because you want to get something from it. To improve yourself, to broaden your horizons,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But don't do it because if that's the only reason you're doing it, then that's a waste.
Right. Yeah. As an example, I did the honors program at Ohio State, and I did it partly to make Ohio State smaller. Right. It's a huge state school, and it's much more competitive now than it used to be. But when I went, getting in was not that challenging. So I wanted to make sure that I had an opportunity to make friends with people who were academically minded. I wanted to live in an honors dorm so that, it was still dorm life, right? But we studied some. It was a lot quieter than the other dorms. I wanted that community. So for me, that was the motivation. But yeah, if you're just thinking about what does it look like nothing looks good if you can't reflect on what it meant to you.
That's
you
right.
know?
Mhm.
It's the same exact question we see all the time from students who are engineering majors going, well, I
Mhm.
did engineering because I thought I would look better, and I only have a 3.5, but it's engineering, so they're gonna like it. Is that okay? And it's just like do what's gonna fit you the best.
Mhm.
Yeah. My real extreme example of that is one time I had a student who had a 2.2 at Cornell. And she was like, but isn't that the same as like a 3.5 or 3.7 at other schools? And I
Nope.
was like, no,
No.
I
It's a
don't know
2.2.
who fed you that lie.
Cornell.
Yeah, right. That's probably right.
Um, yeah. You gotta put in the work.
Yep.
All right.
Dan the man.
Dan the man. All right, where is this one? I want to send a letter of interest and updates post-interview to a school that accepts them. How do I state that X School of Medicine is one of my top choices? Do I just plainly state that in the letter? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Honesty is the best policy.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love you. Will you go steady with me? Yeah, that's what you got to do.
Yep.
Oh no. Postscript.
I was ignoring it.
Oh
And by
my
the way, I wasn't talking about
gosh.
you.
Yeah, that's
That
funny.
is
Thanks for chiming in.
hilarious.
It's funny because it's true.
That's funny, Lena.
Let's see.
Med school rep told me to do a post-bacc because my GPA is a 2.7, even though I have a 4.0 60 credit upward trend. Thoughts? Yeah, my thoughts. That's one school.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's one school, and I that would not be my recommendation.
Yeah.
For what you've described here. So
Yeah.
And we don't know what school it was. Maybe that's not a school that you would want to apply to in the future, right?
Mhm.
If they're already sort of saying, no, you need to do this and this.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah,
It's
the
almost-
only
Go ahead.
go ahead.
You go. You go.
The only thing I would nitpick at is just making sure that those 60 hours are science.
Yes.
If for some reason your upper trend is like psychology and sociology or something, which
Yeah.
certainly
Fair
has
point.
meaning, will help you, right? But yeah, that just sounds like
Mhm.
a weird one-off.
I agree. I agree.
Very, very good point.
Okay. We're getting a lot of do I have chances questions today, friend. And we don't have crystal ball.
Susan asks, or Suzanne or something. I've worked as a surgical tech in the OR, nursing assistant in the ICU, and emergency technician in the ER. Do I still need to shadow doctors? Very common question, right? I have tons of clinical experience. Do I still need to shadow?
This is a great question, and what I would say as an answer to this question is, I think it would benefit you to do a little bit of shadowing outside the hospital to see what is the work of a physician look like in a private practice, a family practice, situation or whatever, just to get a sense of, because all your experience that you're describing here is hospital-based experience. And so I would say, maybe get a sense of what does this look like. You just do a little bit, maybe a couple of times, 3 or 4 times, whatever you're able to do in a family practice or a pediatrics clinic or whatever, just to get a viewpoint on what does that look like relative to what I've experienced in these various departments in the hospital.
Yep.
Good point.
Yeah. Get a little bit to put on your application, because there are some random schools that will screen you out for not having any shadowing on your application.
All right. We're getting a lot of what are my chances questions, so we're not going to do them all, but I will pick one so we can talk about it broadly.
Yes, I love. What are my chances? Natalie asks, I'm applying this cycle and I have a question about my chances. I have a 2.5 science GPA, a 2.8 undergrad GPA, I'm assuming, a cumulative GPA, but a 4.0 in my biomedical master's. I scored a 497 on my MCAT. I have 8,000 clinical hours and volunteering. Applied to both MD and DO. Scott, what are my chances?
Yeah, I think the MCAT's the big problem here. Obviously, undergrad dicey, did great in your master's program, which is fantastic. Lots of clinical hours and volunteering, excellent. All of that is great, but I get really nervous, very nervous, anytime an MCAT's below 500. So I think that Natalie, I think that the MCAT is the big thing. I would say you need to retake the MCAT to increase that score, and then, but with these stats as you stated them here, I don't think you're ready to apply. I would say you need to work on the MCAT.
Yeah. That MCAT, even for I know we don't like talking about it this way, but pre-meds do. Even for those DO schools, a 497 is
low.
pretty low.
One challenge is this time of year when people say I'm applying this cycle, sometimes they mean I've applied, which is what Natalie meant. And sometimes they mean I'm applying in May. So Natalie has applied and her chances are still higher than zero.
Right.
But why don't we talk about, in this case, you're kind of already saying you think it's smart for her to go ahead and plan on a retake.
Yeah.
But we've got a lot of question askers saying, I haven't had any interviews yet. So let's discuss, when do you start to make a plan to reapply?
Well, but before we even jump into that, because Natalie applied to DO schools, many DO schools are very favorable to January MCAT test dates.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that would be the first thought, so that we don't waste this application cycle. If you think you're ready, Natalie, to take the MCAT in January, get on the AAMC website, register for the test in January, and go crush it and show that you're better than that 497. And that will give the DO schools that you applied to this year another opportunity to go, okay, this is better. We want to talk to you now.
Good point. Yeah.
So let's assume January is out of the question for her. It's too stressful, not enough time to prep. What are next steps for any? What do you think?
Definitely start looking at retaking. Maybe March. March might be a better option. Gives you a little bit more time. I think that by November, right? We usually say like around Thanksgiving, you kind of have a sense of what's coming up, if it's happening, if it's not happening. But I would definitely not rule that out. I would definitely start looking at a schedule for getting MCAT prepped on and maybe look at a March date.
Yep.
And I think, the thing about, in a more general way, I think the thing about what should students do that have applied this year are not hearing anything. Let's say, the question was, when should I start really thinking about preparing for the next application? I think it's always better to be, to assume the worst. Assume I'm not going to get in and I'm going to be applying next year. So what can I do right now in October and heretofore, or moving forward? What can I do to improve on the areas of my application that need improving on? And then if something happens and you get an interview and you get in somewhere, then great, that's fantastic. But if you wait until January or March or February or whatever to find out, then your timeline is squeezed so tightly that there's not a whole lot you can do. So I think always best to assume the worst, and then move forward in that, within that context.
Agreed.
Mohammed asks, will I get a complete response if I ask med schools how they evaluate international students? as a U.S. undergrad? Ask and find out.
Yeah. I suspect no. I suspect the only thing they're going to find that you're going to find is that they either do or do not accept international students. In terms of how they evaluate them, I don't think you're going to get a whole lot of information on that.
Yeah. They're going to fall back on the language they use for everyone, which is
Right.
holistic review.
Yep.
Mohammed, what I will say is we did a session about international students applying at National Pre-Med Day, and that's here on MAP TV. You can find it in the National Pre-Med Day playlist. So we got into a lot of detail on that. And it helps that you have U.S. undergrad. That's going to be in your favor.
Yep.
You're still going to have a lot of hurdles, but at least U.S. med schools are biased towards U.S. undergrad, and you've got that. So that's great.
Yep.
Ali asks, do I consider myself a reapplicant if I am applying the first time for a particular school, but I had applied to other different schools in the previous cycle? I don't know why this question always comes up. And maybe I dug into the application enough, but when I was writing my last book, the application process book, like I had all the applications open and I was going through them all. Like, I don't understand why this question gets asked so much. Scott, do you know why? Like,
well, so here's my suspicion, and I don't know, Ali, if this is the case for you, but I think for the primary application for AMCAS, for example, when they say, "Are you a reapplicant?" Then you're going to say yes if you applied to any schools last cycle then you'll say yes. Now, there are some medical schools that ask in their secondary applications if you're a reapplicant and information about being a reapplicant.
Yep. And
I'm wondering if Ali is referring to that more so. If it gets asked in a secondary application, then you're really pointing that at that particular school. Did you apply to that particular school last year? Unless they specify any schools otherwise. So just carefully examine the question to know and to try to understand what their meaning is, what they're trying to get from you, what they're trying to understand about you as an applicant before you answer it. But I agree in general. If you applied anywhere through AMCAS, then yes, you're an applicant. You're a reapplicant. Same thing with the COMAS and the Texas system.
Yeah. Amir asks, I studied mechanical engineering at Texas A&M. Struggling this year with the football team. It's all right.
Yeah.
3.74 GPA. The Gators. I don't have much room with the Gators losing to Kentucky. 3.74 GPA. How do you recommend to study for cars for people who have English as their second language? I am very scared of the cars section.
Read.
Yeah.
Critically read. A lot of pre-meds are really, really good at reading science textbooks. So read something non-science. I recommend that you read something long form. Just to build your skills, I would say much longer form than MCAT passages. You are, of course, going to do tons and tons and tons of MCAT cars passages. But I would also recommend that you look into magazines like The Atlantic, The Economist, The New Yorker, was it The New Republic? Things that are like long societal commentaries, just to get your brain used to that kind of intense reading. And then when it's done, talk about it. And again, maybe you have a study buddy, another friend who's learning English as a foreign language who wants to do that with you. Or maybe talk to your pets.
Yes. If you understand the tone of your pet's barking, then you're going to nail cars.
And by the way, Texas A&M, great Texas school, did beat Alabama last week. So,
did you guys see that clip of the family watching the field goal kick?
Yes.
Oh my God, it was just the sweetest thing. The mama wasn't even watching; she couldn't handle it.
That was good.
Yeah.
That was good.
That was great.
Good. Nothing against all of you listeners or watchers in Alabama. I'm not saying that. Well,
Oh,
maybe
it's
saying
good
that.
to see the king
Yeah,
topple,
right.
especially Saban. Come on. Anyway,
Let's see.
Mr. Ridger, I'm a prior military non-trad with 5 years of clinical experience as a medic. All of my time is currently going toward improving my undergrad GPA of 3.1 cumulative. Will my lack of extracurriculars be an issue?
You're military. That's kind of your whole application right there. That's a lot of extracurricular there too. So
Yeah,
I don't
but
think
it sounds like I was this and then I stopped and now I'm only focusing on school. Is it okay that I'm going to have a big gap in my activities?
Okay.
Well, I guess, I don't like the idea that we treat military service differently. So let's shift this a little bit. If this question had said, I am a non-trad who worked as a
Nurse.
a nurse, or I'm a non-trad that worked as a accountant, and I did clinical stuff. I did some volunteering when I was an accountant for an organization or whatever. All my time currently is. So will my lack of extracurriculars be an issue? I think you need to still continue to do some volunteering. That you need to. Now, in this particular case, the clinical stuff, we don't know how long ago that was. So that could be an issue. But I mean, you kind of know clinically what's going on. I would equate the answer here with what I stated in a previous question, is that what you know about is your clinical experiences in the military. What I would encourage you to do is get some clinical experience and some shadowing experience in a non-military setting, which you may not know anything about. What does a doctor's life look like outside the military in a pediatrics clinic on the edge of town? Or what does a hospital setting look like in a regular, typical hospital? So I think you need to, kind of involve that stuff, both to make the contention that this is something that's important to you. And it doesn't have to be a lot of time commitment. You're focusing on school, and I understand that. I think that you need to do it for yourself too, to understand what clinical medicine looks like in a variety of different contexts.
Yep. Agree. I am a huge fan of consistency when it comes to activities. And I think the thing that holds students up is we say, continue to get experiences. And immediately in their mind, they think, oh, I need 20 hours a week. Like, no, like, especially having tons of hours already being a medic in the military, just like one day a week, one day every 2 weeks, just to continue to get some experience out there. And what I also really like for that reason, or giving that advice, is that students, I've talked to enough students who make a transition like this and then they get burnt out on the classroom stuff or the MCAT prep stuff. And I'll ask them, when's the last time you shadowed? When's the last time you got some clinical experience? And they say, well, I haven't. I've been so focused on this. I'm like, get back into a clinic, put yourself back around patients to consistently remind you why you're doing this.
Absolutely. Yep.
Definitely. And we hear that from students, right? Like that helps keep their head in the game, helps them remember the goal. So it should be one of the more exciting parts of your life.
Yeah.
All right. We're at 9 to the hour. Probably have time for one or two more. Here's a quick one.
What is the best time to take the MCAT for a first-time taker and TMDSAS applicant?
It doesn't matter that you're applying to Texas, but for any application service, if you're hoping to apply in 2022, then you should be ideally taking the MCAT in January or March. Yep. So that means for anyone listening, signing up today or tomorrow based on the AAMC map. registration will stay open, but some cities
Hmm.
book out the first couple days. So you want to, if you're definitely set on January or March, which is what we recommend, go get it now. April is still okay. May is what you have to think about is not just when am I taking it and getting my scores back, but heaven forbid something happens. The alarm doesn't go off, the power goes off at the test center, you get pneumonia. I mean, I don't want any of those things for any of you, but if it happens, when are you going to retake, right? So why not make a plan that involves cushion for error? And if there's no error, you're just ahead of the game.
Yep.
That is that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's see.
Ooh, you see Gurpreet's question here?
Oh, we can go to Gurpreet. All right.
That's a good one. I'll show it here.
Thanks.
Any advice that you can give an applicant with no science background? How should one prepare for the MCAT? I'm a Canadian student that does not need science classes for the school's admissions. So it's very interesting, right? And we're seeing more and more schools here in the US. It's still a very small number where they got rid of all of their prereqs. They're just like, show us you're good, take the MCAT, and we'll get you in. You don't need to prove that you did 1 year of this and 1 year of that. But the MCAT's still a science test, right, Rachel?
Yeah. It's still about half content, half critical reading, critical thinking, problem solving. And you could even argue that it's maybe a little bit more on the critical thinking side. But still, if a test is 40% of something, that's probably not something you skip. So yeah, I guess what it is, for Canada and for anyone who's applying to those med schools that sort of say, we just want to know that you've got the content. It works well if you're really great at self-studying. You're going to need to know that content for the exam. I would start by going to the AAMC. There's a giant document you can print that's all the topics, or you can just interact with the online version of it. But get yourself the list of every single topic that could potentially be covered on the exam. And then using Khan Academy, using secondhand college textbooks, start teaching yourself that information. It's just, I think what it means is it probably adds more time to your MCAT prep, right? So MCAT prep is usually a mix of content review and critical problem solving. And for you, it's going to be content instruction, which typically takes longer than review. But it's possible. I mean, people do it every year. You just need to really respect the MCAT and give it the time that it mandates.
Yeah, and maybe take a diagnostic, see how you go, where are you going in blind, not knowing anything about this test.
Yeah.
That's a good place to start too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for one thing, what it'll do is it'll show you how far your reading skills are going to take you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. I feel bad that I teased Arabella, so let's go back real quick.
When should you apply to a post-bacc in your senior year? We had a couple of questions about timing-wise for post-bacc programs. I don't know. When do post-baccs open?
I think, yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that I know the answer to that either.
I think it's a very similar timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Let me Google post-bacc CAS.
Yeah.
Oh, good idea.
Post-bacc CAS, yeah. All right, so while Ryan's Googling that, we can maybe take one more.
Oh, that's a good one. Played D1 football at the U. I was just wondering how much emphasis medical schools place on sports. Well, I would say the first thing I would say to that is that depends on whether your football team was winning or losing.
False.
No, I'm totally kidding there, Elias. But honestly, I mean, I think the medical schools do acknowledge that varsity sports players have a rough go. That there's a huge time commitment for that, and that it really does take a lot of a big effort in terms of time management. But there's a lot of resources in most D1 sports, athletic departments, for tutoring and stuff like that. And so I would say it's not a huge emphasis that they put on sports, but I do think that they do give a little bit of credit, and they do acknowledge that varsity players have a lot going on.
Yeah, and I guess I would take that a step further and say, like, the standards are still the standards, right? You're still expected to have great grades and meaningful clinical. What would probably be common to see is that it might take you a little longer to graduate because of the things you're balancing.
Right.
But yeah, you still got to do what you got to do, and it's not just sports, right? It could be,
Right.
you know, someone who's a theater major and is, you know, doing rehearsals
Heavily,
for 5 hours a day, and you still got to do the other things. But what it probably should help you with is some activity reflection, right? Hopefully you learned a lot about collaboration and discipline.
Teamwork.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Scott? Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, if you play D1 football at Alabama, then just give up. It's not,
Ouch.
not going to happen.
Wow.
Yeesh.
That's awesome.
Is it any
did say
secret that
at
I
the
don't
U.
like Alabama?
So Elias says at the U, and typically when they say at the U, they're either talking about University of Ohio, right? They call it the U, or University of Miami. It's typically the U.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I'd be interested, Elias. What U are you referring
Elias,
to?
tell us where you went. That'd be interesting.
We could just Google if that's his name. Anyway, back to post-bacc. So post-bacc, and not every post-bacc program uses post-bacc. So take this with a grain of salt. Post-bacc application cycle opens August 12th of 2021 this year. And they close July of next year. So it's a very long application cycle as well. But there you have it. That's when the cycle opens up.
Yep.
And it was the University of Miami.
Okay.
The real you.
So Miami's struggling this year. So.
This year they've been struggling for a decade.
Yeah, well,
Come on.
that's true. That is true. A great history, but recently hasn't been so great. Yeah. But I'm sure you're a great football player, Elias. I'm sure you're the best on the team.
So there's one really good question. I know we're at about a minute till 2, and Brittany, I know you have a hard stop, so one of us may have to drop off, but I wanted to tackle this one here.
I can hang out for 2 minutes.
Lena asks, my why for becoming a physician involves my experiences with an eating disorder. I'm fully recovered. However, I'm nervous about what med schools may think about my past. Should I not mention it? Great question. Whether it's eating disorder, whether it's mental health stuff.
Right.
Lots of students have concerns. If I talk about this, what will medical schools think? Brittany, what do you think?
I think if it's your why, you have to be authentic. It's so important to you shaping who you are. There's a way to talk about it, and I say this also, if you're able to talk about this during an interview as well and not get emotional around it, that's a big thing to consider, because obviously you don't want to have a breakdown during your interview, but it's your why. It sounds like you've embraced it, you've come out of it. And I think it's so important to who, to why you're on this path. You should definitely mention it.
Yep. So Lena is a third year at Cornell. She's the one who went to Cornell, and they did indeed tell us that. What do you think? Lena asked a lot of good questions today that we brought up. What do you think about Lena winning our year access to Mapped? And
love it.
Love it.
advising?
Love it.
Absolutely.
Love it. Yeah.
So Lena,
Okay.
send us an email, info@mapped.com, and we'll get you set up.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right. So Lena, send us an email, info@mapped.com. I wanted to answer for the group. I just posted this in chat. Someone asked about the parent session we had last week, and if it would also be useful for non-traditional spouses. 100%.
Absolutely.
Yep.
We definitely marketed it as a parent thing because we've been getting a lot of feedback about, I wish my parents understood, but we actually surveyed the group, and there were spouses and other family members there. So mapped.com/parents. The session already happened, but you can catch the replay there. We've left that link up. So it'll, you'll have to confirm your registration. And then once you confirm it, you will automatically get a link to the replay. And then while I'm sharing links, it's not too late to sign up for pre-med launch. So anyone who is, oops, well, that's a typo. Again, anyone who is newer in the pre-med process or just wants to double check that they've got the right steps, later today, we're going to be talking about what pre-meds need to know. And Scott, that's your session. You want to give a couple highlights?
Yeah, it's really I'm going to be talking about 6 important keys for new pre-meds. So it's really focused on those who are brand new to the pre-med life. Whether you're a first year student in college, or you've just switched you were something else major and you're just switching into this, or whether you're not a non-traditional student and you're coming from a different career, for whatever reason, you're a brand new pre-med, this is focused on you. And I'm going to be talking about 6 important key characteristics that you can go and look at and really dive into. So show up today and see if there's not some stuff that'll help you out.
Awesome.
All right. Well, we didn't get to every question. We don't every week. Sometimes you guys are really active, but come back next week and try again. Or Friday, right? You've got your live Instagram live
Friday. I do live Instagram. Yep. I do.
Okay. All right.
See ya.
Awesome.
Bye, friends.
Bye all.
Bye-bye.